Hey family, good morning, good afternoon, good evening to you. Welcome to this place I call Let's Get Your Mind Right. Because we have a lot of mental challenges, and most of us know that that's half of the battle right there. Is getting your mind right, understanding what really your place is in history, understanding history. See, because I understand that some of us, especially my Caucasian brothers and sisters, they have not been made to know and understand the things that we have about history, about their place in society, about our place, even the difference between chattel slavery and indenture servitude. And I think that's what a lot of that problem is, and it just carries on, and we have a bunch of disinformed or misinformed people who have no clue to how America works, to what has happened to us here in the northern shores of America. And I think it's real important that that part of our history become expressed to the point where if you are white and you are defending racism or that Donald Trump or thinking it's not that bad, I think it's very important that every chance that we get, we let y'all know how diabolical chattel slavery was, how we carry that memory in our DNA. That's why a lot of us, when we just look at you, we get repulsed. And especially because you haven't tried to make any concessions, or you haven't tried to make any accommodations. You haven't apologized. You haven't made amends. And I think it's that kind of arrogance and pompousness that continues to plague the relationship between black and white people. Okay? And that's a fact. And so I'm going to take it back for you a little bit to all of my people who are enamored with the book, because I'm going to take it all the way back there. It's really interesting to me how those of you who relate to scripture, let's bring it here. Let's go to Genesis 15 and 13. Okay? And we're going to say, and he said unto Abraham, know of a surety that thy seed shall be a stranger in a land that is not theirs, and shall serve them, and they shall inflict them for 400 years. First of all, do you know anybody else that carries that story? Because the white man has inflicted us for over 400 years. Right? So we're going to start right here. Now, there's a reason for all that. We ain't gotten into that yet. Okay? Because we should have never allowed you into Timbuktu. We should have never done certain things that were spiritually against who we are and who you were. And so this is the price that we paying for that. So I'm not trying to absolve all our responsibility for dealing with y'all like that, because we shouldn't have. Okay? And a nation, remember we said that, know of a surety that thy seed shall be a stranger in a land that is not theirs, and shall serve them, and they shall afflict them 400 years. And also, that nation whom they shall serve will I judge. And afterward shall they come out with great substance. And thou shalt go out to thy fathers in peace. Thou shalt be buried in a good old age. Okay? Now, I don't know who y'all think this definition describes, but to me it describes black people very well. We've been in bondage for over 400 years in this place, in the northern wilderness of America. So when you're dealing with that aspect of the circumference of what people's knowledge is in terms of slavery, you come across people like, I guess the person's name was Terrence. You come across these type of people that don't really know the history, Blake, but they're quick to get up and argue. So let's just, and y'all know I love and I encourage y'all to support Laree Daniel Favors. I think the sister is really, for a young person, I think she really got it going on. I think she really gets to the heart of the matter. I think she's a very good educator. However, she by trade is an attorney. I just think she's got a good message. And for y'all, especially younger people, white, you get a chance to really understand how and why we got into this situation that we're in now. So just take a listen.
Thank you for calling. What would you like to say?
I caught some of the conversations, a couple callers before me, but I want to just refer to the gentleman that was just talking before me, and I just want to say, first of all, I think the premise of reparations is a great thing, but there's a lot of things that are being said that there's things that are left out. And
now, excuse me, I'm gonna stop it right here, because you know damn well he don't think the premise of reparations is a good thing. You already know he lying. He starting off lying.
I feel like it's a constant narrative with Urban View, with a lot of things that I hear on here, and the people that call in, and I'm a white person, that like white people, the white folks, and that them damn white people and white women. And as far as reparations, and as far as the Atlantic slave trade, I mean, there's some important facts that, like the caller before this left out. I mean, we know, I mean, it's a fact that a very large proportion of Africans that were taken from inland Africa and brought to the coast and sold were taken by other Africans. Like, it's important to like, that's not like a minute fact. And the other thing, like the guy that just called said that this channel is an ecosystem of teaching our people about the possibilities, and not so much you, but I've tried to call many times to get on with Clay, and
let's stick to what we do here, because I don't speak to.
I feel like it's.
I'll give you another just 15 more seconds so you can land the plane.
Okay, all right, 15 more seconds. I feel like I wish there would be more of a narrative to people of taking some responsibility, and not so much like you're just a victim and white people are all bad, because I mean that's extremely offensive to someone like me.
So Blake, how long have you been listening to Urban View? How long have you been listening to Urban View?
I started listening to it. You know what? I'll tell you exactly when I started listening to it. I have XM radio, and I'm fanatical about news and getting all sides of news. And the first time I caught it, Clay was on, and he was talking about Stephen A. Smith had made some kind of statement about Trump.
About how long ago was that? I'm just trying to get a sense as to how long.
Okay. It probably was, I'm going to say, like 4 or 5 months ago.
Okay,
And
all right. So
I
welcome
don't
to the
like,
welcome to the Calling family. I got it. We got to land the plane here because we got other folks to get on, and I have a guest coming in.
But I just want to.
So I want to respond to things that you said, and then we'll
go ahead.
move forward.
No.
I am. So you'd mentioned a couple of things that I think are really important. I appreciate you calling with the spirit of inquiry to try to get a sense of understanding, and I appreciate that. And so I'm going to respond in that same spirit, and I hope you can receive it in the energy in which it's given. So the idea that there was a couple things there that, damn white people, I don't know that anyone has said that on Urban View. We do talk a lot about issues of race, gender, culture, identity, politics, and the law. I don't know that I've ever used the phrase, and these damn white people, I don't think I've ever used that phrase on these airways. And I'm sure you may have felt some sense of condemnation about the choices that many white Americans have engaged in, both as individuals and collectively. So I just want to push back a little bit on that. And you'd mentioned that there were some folks who had been introduced into the transatlantic slave trade vis-a-vis internal wars that were taking place in the continent of Africa. And I think that for a lot of people, that's where the story sort of starts and ends. And what we have to recognize is that slavery as a function of wartime is something that existed for millennia. The Greeks were doing it. The Germanic tribes were doing it. In fact, the word slave comes from Slavic, which speaks to the Northern Europeans engaging in these processes. The Arab nations were doing it. African nations were doing it. And if you were engaged in war and your side lost, you were going to likely face enslavement as a possible outcome. Now, here's the challenge, Blake. We can't just stop the story there. So enslavement during that era was a function of societal hierarchies. And so one might be a slave, but one was still a human being.
Now, she's going to give you a history lesson right now that is very important that you understand. Here we go.
You might be a slave, but you might at some point be able to marry my daughter if I had captured you and your people in enslavement, because you were still considered a human being. You would be able to have children who would be your children. They wouldn't necessarily be my children. I wouldn't have agency over them. You would be able to explore the trades. You would be able to have some sense of capacity where you could earn on your own, and you would probably also be able to buy your own freedom because, again, your humanity was not taken. What was happening in the Americas, in the Western slave trade, when European Americans decided to abandon their European distinctions and came together under the label of white, they created this thing called chattel slavery. Now, chattel slavery was a brand new function. It's like going from the type of searching I did as a kid when I was looking at Encyclopedia Britannica and looking at paper books to get my research, to going to ChatGPT AI sort of research. The gulf was that extreme. And in chattel slavery, you lost all humanity. In chattel slavery, you were no longer a human being who I happened to capture as a function of war. You were now no different than my cow, than my dog, than my rooster. I could force you into rape. I could rape you. I could force the children that were born from that rape to also be enslaved. And I didn't just own you. I owned you, your children, your children's 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 children, because slavery was never supposed to end. And I didn't just own your body. I owned your emotions. I owned your expressions. I owned everything that you produced. It was a fundamentally absolute different form of enslavement. It was the kind of enslavement that would allow for things like human trafficking. It was a kind of enslavement that would allow for things like laws that would say anyone who is born from a woman who is black, if she is impregnated by a white person, that child is enslaved. It was a type of slavery that would say you couldn't be educated. You weren't allowed to know things or to read things. You weren't allowed to have independent thoughts. You weren't allowed, if you were caught with a book, you could be killed. If you were caught trying to learn how to read, you could be sold away from your family. If you were looking at the master in a way that indicated you wanted something other than what the master wanted to do, you could lose your life. There were laws put in place that said 2 or 3 of you, no more, can gather before a white person has to.
I'm sorry. Now, when you have that much control over somebody's body and mind, this is why these people think that they can do whatever they want to do to us. This is why these people think it's not a problem, because they've been trained. And I need for other white people to hear this as well. Y'all have been trained. You've been pretty much deputized to treat black bodies the way you have. Because if chattel slavery was not an option, slavery would have continued. Indentured servitude would have been the law of the land, And we wouldn't have the type of situation that we have today, where you people actually think somebody have mistreated you. That you could have a vice president say, you no longer gonna apologize for being white. You know what? You need to apologize for how you and your ancestors have treated black people. Okay? And in order to have some humility, you must apologize for the tragic, devilish, demonic way you have treated black people. You have to have that in your loins, in your heart. And if you don't, you can never, ever, ever be saved. Because no one has ever did anything to you because you was white. You've done everything to everyone else because they weren't. And the hypocrisy and the madness of you not even being able to realize that is just deafening. It really is. It's demented.
To be present, to monitor the conversation, and then break the challenges. It wasn't like the enslavement of the old day. Whereas the enslavement of the old day, there were a few things that were able to happen. Like, eventually, you'd no longer be a slave. That didn't happen here. Eventually, you were always going to be a slave. They created their entire economic system based on forced slave labor of millions of people who were human trafficked. That had never existed before. Chattel slavery had never existed before. And the other challenge that we face, Blake, is that you, as a white person, self-identified, still benefit from that, because not only did the racism that was used and created to justify enslavement not go away after enslavement, it amplified. And it got entrenched. And they did things like, after the Civil War, when the 13th Amendment was passed that said this chattel slavery is abolished, except if you've been convicted of a crime. And the reason they put that exception in there was because the white Americans who benefited from chattel slavery, which is, again, the newest form of slavery, had never existed before. As they benefited from that slavery, they could not imagine what it would mean to work on their own farms and produce for themselves. And so they began passing these laws called black codes, which were the same thing as the slave codes, but you couldn't call them slave codes anymore because technically slavery was over. So
Larry is giving you a history lesson in 15 minutes that you have never gotten in the school systems here in North America. Ever. And that's why we have a nation that's so dumb, and have a Donald Trump that can say he likes dumb people. See? Because then there's no accountability. He likes the dummies. And I personally would be insulted if somebody said that to me and I followed this guy. Here we go.
So the black codes get passed. These were laws that only black people could be charged criminally with. And once you were criminally charged with violating a black code, like, I don't know, talking too loudly in front of a white person, or 5 or more black people gathering together without a white person present, or treating a white woman in a way that she didn't feel like she was being centered, or engaging in anything that a white person found offensive, you would then be convicted of that crime and then resentenced to enslavement. And so the reality is, when we're talking about slavery, we really do it a disservice by presuming that all of it is the same, and by starting and stopping the story at these arbitrary points that might make us feel good about what we do know without revealing all the things that we don't know. So Americans in particular, the Western powers in particular, did a really good job on completely revolutionizing enslavement and taking human people who, had they been enslaved somewhere else, would have kept their humanity, would have been able to become a part of society, would have been able to vote, would have been able to be a part of free-thinking communities. In American slavery, the opposite was true. In slavery in the West, the opposite was true. And so that's why it's different. And so that's why, even to suggest, well, people were selling each other, well, everybody was doing that. That wasn't the problem. The problem was when your ancestors made some decisions to amplify it and to change it fundamentally so that people were locked into a permanent caste system.
It's called throwing a monkey wrench in some shit. That's what it's called. Y'all had to take it. Y'all had to do too much. Y'all took chattel slavery and made it 100 times worse. Y'all took, indentured servitude and made it 1,000 times worse. And that you come up with chattel slavery, where you get to burn black people alive. You get to take black men and cut off, castrate them, and then sell their body parts in jars, burn them on Sunday after church. And I think a lot of y'all don't know y'all history. And that's the reason why you can even complain. You got the nerve to interject yourself in places that you shouldn't even be. Let's continue.
That was immutable. It would not allow for anyone to navigate out of that class system. And so that's one of the fundamental differences of enslavement between this current era and what was experienced in the medieval era prior thereto. Does that make sense, Blake?
And don't know the things that you're telling me. What is that going to do? Tell me what's going to happen if we have federal reparations and give hundreds of thousands of dollars to just black people across the board in California, wherever. Do you think that's going to improve what the things that you?
What's not clicking? What's not clicking?
Well, Blake, I would suggest that you let us figure that out. We'll let you know what good it'll do. That's not a question for you. That's a question for so the person who is not impacted by the illness don't get to tell the doctor how to heal. We'll let you know what we're gonna do with it, and you'll be okay. And you'll still have white privilege. That's not gonna change. So you'll be fine.
That needs the history lesson that you just gave me. That's the problem.
What's the problem?
You have people that you have black people that do not know the history, the entire history lesson that you just gave to me.
Well, you must not be part. So again, we're not going to debate each other. I should say we're not going to talk over each other. I would suspect you probably don't know that many black people in real life, because a lot of us know that history. And in fact, you called into a show with a question that I was able to answer off the top of my head, and everything I shared with you wasn't new to the audience. We've been new. So I'm glad that you're listening. I'm glad you're learning this history for the first time. But the reason that you're learning the history for the first time is because your community has decided to largely self-segregate as individuals and as a collective. You ban books and or don't fight for the books that are banned to not be banned. So you can't say we don't know the history when you participate either actively in the refusal to learn the history or passively by not resisting those who are actively trying to prevent the history. We've been new. And so we teach this to our kids. We learned it in our schools. We got whole ass curriculums. We done had scholars talking about this for 11 years. It ain't new to us. This is actually, I'm sure half of my audience is yawning because they're like, child, we talking about this again. So I'm glad this is new information for you. Welcome to the Call-In family. I hope you keep listening and learning and growing, as are all of us. And we'll get it right most of the time. When we get it wrong, we correct the record. But this ain't new to us. We true to this. It might be new to you, but then again, you are new to this and to us. so there's that.
Thank you, Larry Daniels Favors. I really appreciate you taking the time to educate this white guy about where we are in America. And like you said, black people know this information. And do you know how frustrating it is to know things and know how we got in this condition, but the dominant society want to act like it's an illusion? Like they don't, like the powers that be or the one that's more educated amongst them. We don't know. They just love making excuses, and they're so violent. And if they are violent, do you understand why? You should have violence every day if they was as violent as you say. The worst thing about it is they not hurt nobody but themselves. All their violence is turned inwards towards themselves. You got off lucky. Because you know what I'm saying? You got off lucky. And that's the way you should look at it. All that misplaced anger that you see, that you tell us we're so violent about, is really misplaced. Because we know if we run to you and do to you what we really feel in most instances. I'm not talking about your Officer Tatum's and them. Those are and exceptions and aberrations of us. But for the most part, the worst thing in the world is for somebody to do something to you and know they did it, and then don't want to take responsibility for it. Make all kinds of excuses for why this is. Oh, I don't know why they act like that. I don't know what's going on. Well, I just thought it was time that, those of you who can handle the truth, you get your clock rocked. And that's what Larry Daniels did. And I again suggest that those of y'all who have Sirius XM, it's channel 126, is Urban View. And I really like the content. Her and Karen Hunter, Clay Kane. I think these are very good progressive voices in our community that a lot of young people should be listening to. Because that's where you're really going to find out what the truth is. You can't take a master liar or somebody who told you for centuries that the white man speak with forked tongue and expect the truth. We have to be the light bearers and bring them the truth for those that don't know. For those that do know, God gonna handle them. But for those who don't know, they have to be introduced, because the whole education system is corrupt. And they haven't been taught anything, but we like to beg, and that we're the problem in all of society, and our violence, as opposed to, I understand these people angry, and every day we wake up, we ought to thank God that they don't turn it on us, and that they just want restitution, and they don't want revenge. Because if they did, this landscape would be a lot different. But that's not the people we are. And we love America now because we got blood soaked into the fiber of this place. That's why a lot of us don't want to give it up. Our roots. The Native American that's here. We're not. This is all we know. You the Johnny come lately. Not only in life but over here. In terms of the human family. You the Johnny come lately. Yet you are in control and what they call a Khalifa of all of us. Now, if you're gonna take advantage of that and use it for good, otherwise the kingdom is coming down. And from the looks of it, I don't think we can stop it. And just my opinion. Again, I thank Lori Daniel Favors for helping me get this show out, because I really appreciate the way she taught Blake. So what say y'all? What y'all think about it? Let me have your opinion. Leave a comment and share the video, and I'll see you in the next one.